Look at how close this contest is in the 18th Congressional District in Pennsylvania. More than 220,000 votes have been counted. There is only a 95-vote advantage for the Democrat Conor Lamb over the Republican Rick Saccone. Look at this, 109,945 votes for Conor Lamb, 109,850 votes for Rick Saccone, 49.7%, 49.7%. Those are the numbers right now. 99% of the vote has been counted. Let's go over to John King. We're waiting now. There are a few thousand absentee ballots in Allegheny County and Washington County. Let me go to Gary Tuckman first right away. You're over there in Allegheny County. We expect momentarily, Gary, to get the absentee ballot count in Allegheny County.
That's right, Wolf. This is the warehouse in Allegheny County where the absentee ballots were being counted, at least 3,000 of them. You can see it is empty because they have finished 5 minutes ago. They are done with the count. What is the count? We're about to find out. In a private room right to my right, they are now uploading the information. They're going to get it all together. They are then going to come out to us and tell us the total number of votes in this county. They're not going to tell us the total number of absentee votes. They're going to tell us the total number of votes that were voted for today and the absentee ballots together. It will then be our job right here to use our mathematical ability to figure out what the absentee balloting was. 14,614 votes. That's how many more votes the Democrat got over the Republican here in Allegheny County. With the votes that were cast today, with the absentee ballots, we will soon find out. Wolf, back to you.
We'll get the results there. John King, the absentee ballots in Allegheny County and Washington County could make a huge difference. And I was just told right before we came back on the air, 2 precincts out in Westmoreland County here. Again, this is an area where Rick Saccone is running strong, 57%. 2 precincts out. We don't know how many votes that is. You can assume that we're in a race right now where the 95-vote lead, if it continues to lead, that Rick Saccone might cut in some from that. How much, we don't know. We're waiting for those 2 precincts. After that, you're absolutely correct. Greene County, we're at 100%. It's a small county, so any absentees here, we don't expect it to be a significant amount. Here in Washington County, you just talked to the commissioner. He says they're not going to count these until tomorrow because of a manpower issue, and we're waiting. This is 3,000. 3,000 here, where Conor Lamb is ahead, and a 95-vote race at the moment. The margin here is going to be incredibly significant to the final outcome here. Because there's 3. All right, hold on a minute. Gary Tuckman, you're back in Allegheny County. I understand you have the absentee ballot numbers.
Yes, we have Mark Wolosik with us, who's the election director in this county. I will tell you very quickly that it's very good for the Democrat in this county. The Democrat Lamb got 1,930 absentee votes. The Republican Saccone, 1,178 votes. By a 752-vote margin, the Democrat increased his lead in this county. Is my interpretation correct?
That's correct, yes.
How long did the uploading process take?
It probably took about 5 minutes.
All right, so I'm counting. There's about a little over 3,100 votes that were cast. Absentee, you sent out 4,100, so 1,000 votes weren't brought back here.
That's correct.
Okay, so let me read it one more time. The absentee balloting here in Allegheny County, the Democrat Lamb, 1,930 votes. He's making sure I'm accurate. The Republican Saccone, 1,178 votes. That is a 752-vote margin. Lamb over Saccone here in Allegheny County. In the voting itself, the voting today, it was a 56,725 to 42,111. So by more than 14,000 votes, the Democrat won here. He's increased it with these absentee ballots by a total of 752 more votes. So that's positive news for the Democrat Lamb in his bid to win this congressional seat. Wolf, back to you.
Thanks very much, Gary. And I want to point out in Washington County, they're not going to count the absentee ballots, John, until tomorrow. But Larry Spar, the director of elections there, told us that it was the absentee ballots 1,195. But in Washington County, as opposed to Allegheny County, they won't be counted until tomorrow.
Won't be counted until tomorrow. And then we're at 95. Then we just added that in. That's why I scribbled the 847 up here. So now Allegheny's done. Today's vote, the absentee vote, done. Conor Lamb has an 847-vote lead. And here's what we're waiting on then. So we have, make sure that's up so I can do this. 2 precincts out here. Rick Saccone's leading in the county. Again, 847 is the difference. If it tracks the rest of the night, Rick Saccone will pick up some votes there. Washington County at 100%. As you mentioned, absentee ballots count tomorrow. Westmoreland, absentee ballots count tomorrow. 847 votes. May change by a few with the final precincts here, but otherwise Conor Lamb with a lead, depending on absentee votes being counted in the 2 counties that have voted Republican tonight. The question is, Do the absentee ballots track the live voting today? And if so, how much does Rick Saccone gain? Is it enough?
Yeah.
Is it enough? If it's 847 margin, and you've got 1,000 and change here and 1,000 and change here, you can do the math at home. Rick Saccone's going to have to win those absentee ballots by a pretty significant percentage to make up 847 votes, but in the hunt.
Yeah, 800 was 90 votes before those absentee ballots in Allegheny County were counted. They counted them very quickly, as we pointed out earlier. Washington County, the 1,195 absentee ballots, they will only be counted tomorrow morning.
Right, so you got absentee ballots here, a couple thousand combined, plus some change, with an 847 vote margin as they begin those two counts. So we're going to be tracking those officials tomorrow and nudging them to speed up the count. And
in Greene County, that's the smallest county, only about 2% of the vote. Have they counted? Do we know if they've counted the absentee ballots there?
I have not received that data if they have.
100% of the vote is in.
This is 100% of the vote again. So you're looking at here, a small percentage of the vote, but still, if there are a couple hundred down here, we had the numbers up earlier. I don't know if we have the total number in Greene County that we can bring up here, but 847 votes by our best account, with perhaps a precinct or two still to come in. So the vote count tonight, we should get a little bit more in the final two precincts in Westmoreland County if they report tonight. I don't know if there's a glitch or something like that. Then we're looking at 847 votes to count 2,000 plus absentee ballots.
But take a look at Allegheny County, though. 100% of the vote is in, including the absentee ballots. So that county is done. That is over with. The two other counties where they've still got some absentee ballots, you take a look over there, you see they still have some absentee ballots, but those are Republican counties. You take a look at the number of absentee ballots up there in Greene County. There's 203 absentee ballots. In Washington County, we've been pointing out 1,195. They'll be counted tomorrow morning. Westmoreland County, 1,808 absentee ballots. So they still have to count 3,206 absentee ballots in these three counties that are largely red Republican.
Right, so more than 3,000 absentee ballots to count. Conor Lamb enters that count with an 847 vote lead, and you start looking at the percentages. Does Rick Saccone get 57% of those absentee ballots here? Does he get 53% of the absentee ballots here? Does he get roughly 57, 58% of the absentee ballots here? Do the math. We're going to be here tomorrow counting some votes as they pull out these absentee ballots, without a doubt. Rick Saccone's going to go to bed tonight losing by 847 votes. There are enough votes there, if he wins by a decent percentage, to make it up. It's going to take a lot, though. If
Rick Saccone really does well in those three counties with the absentee ballots, he could potentially make up that 847 margin that Conor Lamb has.
Yeah, the question is, do the absentee ballots, which generally track the vote, but does one campaign have a better absentee ballot operation on the ground there? 57% here, 53% here, 58% here. So if you're Rick Saccone, you're thinking, this is my part of the district. Count those votes.
All right, let's go to Jason Carroll. He's over at Lamb headquarters out there in Western Pennsylvania. They must be pretty nervous as they look at these numbers coming in.
Well, Wolf, it's been a roller coaster ride. You remember in the beginning of the evening, the room was filled with a lot of people who were very enthused by the numbers that they saw early on. But then the mood started to shift as the night started to wear on, and some more of those numbers started to come in. The latest numbers showing that folks here are feeling more excited. When I spoke to a senior campaign advisor, they still feel like they can eke out a win. All night I've been checking in with them, and they've been saying that they feel optimistic. They've been saying that all night. Some of that might be a little bit of a spin, but I can tell you throughout the night, they have said that they felt optimistic. They really feel as though they made a strong effort, especially with the labor vote, especially outside of Allegheny County and some of the more rural parts of the district. But so far, they're pleased with some of the numbers that they're seeing from those absentee votes coming in from Allegheny County. Wolf?
All right, Jason, we're going to have to wait and see what the remaining absentee ballots show up. We're probably not going to know that till tomorrow morning. Right now, Conor Lamb with an 847 vote lead over Rick Saccone, the Republican. Anderson, over to you.
Thanks very much. Everybody's hiding their Rice Krispie treats here during the break. Michael, do you think it's possible they could try to count the ballots in Washington?
I do. I think it's possible that now, given the interest and the realization that the race wouldn't be otherwise decided until tomorrow, it's not definitive, but it's possible that they're reconsidering their decision in Washington County, and maybe we'll count those ballots this evening.
Are you saying that based on someone you've talked to? Or just...
I am.
Okay.
I am, but I'm not reporting 100% that they will. I know that it's being considered.
Okay. Senator?
Yeah, the bottom line is there's 3,200. Joe and I were just sort of, there's 3,200 votes, absentee votes out there, which means that Rick Saccone, to overcome this, has to get probably 63% of that.
Yeah.
Conor Lamb outperformed his vote in Allegheny County by 2 or 3% on the absentees. Let's assume because they're Saccone counties that he outperforms his percentage by 2 or 3%. That gets him to the high 50s, and they don't even get to 60. So now it'll narrow it down, and you may have a recount, but I think the likelihood of him being well, there's also 2 precincts out in Westmoreland County, so we can wait and see. This number may narrow a little.
But you were hedging towards saying that Lamb has the.
I think Lamb clear. I would rather be in Conor Lamb's shoes right now than Rick Saccone.
Joe, you agree?
Absolutely. When you look at the number, that 3,200 number of absentee ballots that are left in Washington and Westmoreland, it's the math is clear. You got to get to about 64, 63% of the vote of those votes to make up that 847 vote lead that Conor Lamb has. Not saying it's not possible. Certainly it is. But
there's no automatic recount, right?
No, you have to call for it. But I was just hearing from a Republican strategist who said that either way there's going to be a recount, one way or another, and that both sides would probably want one to it, or the loser would want one. And
they generally don't change much.
Right, exactly.
This is a close enough race. If it gets down to a couple hundred votes, it's possible. But again, it generally doesn't change that much.
Right, but if it gets down to less.
If it gets down to less.
If it gets down to less, like 8
votes, it definitely could change.
It also depends on whether one of the campaigns or one of the parties was actually working and organizing absentee ballots. And at least from the Allegheny results, like you would think that Lamb was. I don't know who was, but they wouldn't necessarily just work it in their county, in a county that's good for them. They would try to encourage Democrats.
So, Jason, if Conor Lamb does pull this out tomorrow morning, what is the White House? What Trump supporters? What are they going to be saying?
Well, I think Trump
just bad candidate.
Well, I think they're going to be pointing to the fact of the big Trump bump that Saccone got down the home stretch, the fact that they closed a 5-point gap. And you talk about some of the other things the Trump folks did behind the scenes. There was a robocall from the president yesterday. The Trump campaign shared all of their data with Saccone campaign.
Donald Trump Jr. was down there for a long time.
And they had a whole number of folks coming through. You have the tariffs announcement. You have other jobs and economic announcements that have been going on over the past week. I think the Trump people will point to the fact that if you want to have some additional enthusiasm down the home stretch, bring in the president.
Kirsten,
can I just say one thing? You also had the firing of Rex Tillerson. And if it's down to 100 or 200 votes, wait till tomorrow and do something like this, which is not going to be helpful in suburban
Trump supporters were excited by that.
Well,
Trump supporters were like,
I do want to
finally
quickly hear from Kirsten. What were you going to say?
I don't know. I think I was going to respond to what you were saying, but no, I don't remember what you were saying. I don't think that even if there was a bump, there's the point that he was down so far to start with, and that this is, again, we've said it a million times, a district that Donald Trump won by 20 points. It's been, people there vote for Republicans typically, and the fact of the matter is Republicans are freaking out. I mean, they were already freaking out before this happened. They see a wave coming, and I think that people can say things publicly differently, but that's actually what's going on.
Do not go to sleep yet. We're going to get new votes, we believe, from Washington County. All eyes are on the absentee ballots, which could be decisive. This race is still hanging in the balance. We'll be right back.
Extremely close race in Pennsylvania, the 18th congressional district. Right now, 99% of the vote is in. The Democrat Conor Lamb has an 847 vote advantage over Rick Saccone, the Republican. More than 220,000 votes have been counted so far. 111,875 for Conor Lamb, 111,028 votes for Rick Saccone. It's 49.9% to 49.5%, 847 vote advantage for the Democrat. Let's go over to John King. John, we're taking a close look right now at Washington County because there are, 1,195 absentee ballots that have yet to be counted, and we're getting some new information right now. Larry Spar is joining us once again on the phone. He's the Director of Elections in Washington County. Earlier, Larry, you were kind enough to tell us you were going to wait till tomorrow morning to count those absentee ballots, but that has now changed. Update our viewers.
Yes, sir. That's our usual procedure. We have to remove the ballots from the envelopes. We're in the process of doing that right now. And we had discussions, and what we're going to do is scan those ballots tonight once we're done removing all the ballots from the envelopes. And we're also going to do a hand count since it's so close. Once we scan the ballots electronically, we'll also do a hand count.
So you're going to stay up late and count those 1,195 ballots. Will you release the tally, the results of those absentee ballots all at once or partially as they're counted?
No, sir. We release them all at once.
How long do you think this process, Larry, in your experience in counting absentee ballots, how long do you think this will take for us to get the final absentee ballot count in Washington County?
It's probably going to take us several hours, sir.
Several hours, you think?
Yes, sir. Mm-hmm.
And I just want to confirm, 1,195, is that the exact number of absentee ballots?
1,195. Now you have to consider that each one of those ballots has a barcode on them with an address label for return. We electronically scan those barcodes to account for that ballot. And sometimes you may have 1 or 2 or 3 ballots upon scanning the barcode that may miss scanning.
So you're saying that even though you have 1,195 ballots, there may be a handful that are not necessarily going to be officially counted. Is that right?
That's right, sir. That's why we'll pick them up in a hand count. And also
I just want to make sure, Larry, those have been confirmed, right?
I'm sorry, sir?
The 1,195 have been returned, right?
Yes, that's on an electronic produced report.
All right, so that
created by scanning those barcodes.
And the reason you've decided to do it tonight is because of the nature of this race, how close it is, right?
Oh, it's very close. That's correct.
You ever seen anything like this before in your county?
I'm sorry?
Have you ever seen anything like this before in your county?
Absolutely.
You have? This close?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. Well, that's why every vote is important, as we like to say, and it shows us how significant this contest is. We're going to stay in very close touch with you, Larry. You'll update our viewers as the count for these absentee ballots comes in. Thanks so much for joining us.
Yes, sir. You're welcome.
All right. Larry Spar is the Director of Elections in Washington County. This is Washington County. Right now, 100% of the vote, John, is in, but they still have 1,195 absentee ballots.
And so as they count those, and again, let's assume they're all counted for the sake of argument. Here's the challenge for Rick Saccone. You're down 847 votes, and you think, wow, 1,195 in a county I'm winning, 1,800 over here in Westmoreland County, a county he's winning. You think I'm in play. He is in play. However, he needs, depending, I want to come back over here for 1 second. There's a couple precincts still out here. So the math I'm about to give you is ballpark in the sense we have to wait. A couple more precincts here. We hope to come in tonight. We're checking to see what the delay is on these 2 precincts still out in Westmoreland County where Rick Saccone's getting 57% of the vote. So 847 votes. Conor Lamb is ahead right now district-wide. Assume Rick Saccone cuts into a little bit here. Here's the issue. If you look at the absentee ballots here, the absentee ballots here, and the absentee ballots down in Greene County, a much smaller number down here, 203 down here, pull you back out to the entire district, Rick Saccone is going to have to win 60% plus, maybe as high as 63%. It really depends what these last 2 precincts give us. So is he in the hunt? He's in the hunt. However, you look here, 53% today, has to way overperform in absentee ballots what he did today in the live voting. Down here, 58%, if you round that up. Again, is going to have to overperform that when the absentee ballots are counted. 57% over here. By my math, if anyone has different math, please jump out and shout. It's going to get 60% plus, perhaps as high as 62, 63%, depending on what we get when the final 2 precincts, assuming they come in tonight, come in here. So this is as close as it gets. 800, not as close as it gets. We've seen closer than this, actually, but 847 votes. Enough here to make up the difference, but in each of these 3 counties in the 18th district, when they count the absentee ballots, the Republican is going to have to overperform in the absentee count than he did in the live voting today, and by a decent chunk. A chunk that many people would tell you is statistically unlikely, but it's in the hunt. It's possible.
To overcome that 847 vote advantage that Conor Lamb, the Democrat, has over Rick Saccone. Let's go over to Jake. You've been doing some reporting. You're getting some new information. More votes are coming in.
Well, that's right. And John just explained all the things that would need to happen for Rick Saccone to be able to surmount and pass Conor Lamb's 847 vote margin right now. We just spoke with Beth Leckman. She is the election director in Westmoreland County, where there is an outstanding 1,808 absentee ballots that we're waiting to be counted. They are feeding them into the tabulation machines right now, and they are going to count them this evening, and we should have a final number from them within the next 30 to 40 minutes. That's from Westmoreland County. So it does look as though, with Washington County deviating from normal procedure and Westmoreland County doing this, we should have an answer sometime before the sun comes up about whether or not Rick Saccone is able to pass Conor Lamb, who is still up by a very, very narrow margin, 847, but it might be enough. We'll see.
It's amazing, 847 vote margin. More than 220,000 votes have already been counted. Shows how close this contest is. And let's not forget, this is a district that Donald Trump carried by almost 20% in 2016.
That's right. Steve Israel, former Democratic congressman, used to be in charge of the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, just tweeted to me that if anybody had shown him a few years ago this margin, the Democrat and the Republican this close in this district, where the Democrats didn't even run candidates in the last couple House races, he would have called it fake news. It does seem to show how close things are for this election. Whether this is part of a bigger wave or not, we'll see.
Right. I mean, he didn't even run any candidates against the Republicans for a couple of cycles. Look, there's no question. First of all, this is dramatic and it's exciting.
It's why we got into this business.
And it's why we got into this business. And as you have been saying repeatedly, every vote does count. And this is a reminder to everybody out there who isn't so sure that if they really want to make a difference, they do need to use that right that they have. But if you kind of take a step back and look at the big picture about what this means for this election year, this midterm election year, 2018, I'm still getting texts from Republicans saying, first of all, that they would rather be Conor Lamb than them right now, the Democrat.
You would always rather be ahead.
Always. But more importantly, that this doesn't make as David Chalian said earlier, the freaking out factor any less among Republicans. And that even if Rick Saccone, the Republican, ends up pulling ahead, it is entirely possible that in some of these very, very tight swing districts where Republicans are running in areas where Hillary Clinton won, that you might see more retirements. We already have 38 Republican retirements this election cycle. You might even see more because they don't want to deal with a situation that they have in their district where they don't have the benefit of a 20-point lead, a 20-point win that Donald Trump had in their district. It's going to be a lot harder. And so I think we have to keep that in mind in terms of the big picture.
They're counting these absentee ballots as we speak right now. We're about to get some more numbers. It could make the difference. We'll have much more on this very dramatic contest right after this.
And welcome back to an incredibly exciting race in Pennsylvania. Take a look on the board. 99% of the votes counted. Conor Lamb has a lead of just 847 votes. Absentee ballots are still being counted in Washington County. That is expected to take several hours, we're told. Westmoreland County also counting ballots. We expect to have a number from them perhaps within the next 30 minutes or so. Right now, I want to go to our senior congressional correspondent, Manu Raju. Manu, you've been tracking reaction from both parties on Capitol Hill. What are you hearing?
Well, Democrats in particular still are very confident about the prospects for taking back the House in the fall, even as this race is very, very tight, even as a possibility that it could slip away despite that earlier, healthier margin for Conor Lamb. It looked like it was early in the night. There's still look at how this battlefield nationally looks very favorable to them. More than 100 seats or so are more competitive than this Pennsylvania 18th congressional district seat. And Democrats, several Democratic strategists that I talked to tonight still see a battlefield about 4 dozen to 5 dozen seats in which they expect Democrats to be pretty heavily invested in to try to flip by November's elections. And Republicans agree, but they believe the margin's a little bit smaller, probably 40 to 50 seats. And that is more than the 2 dozen that are needed for Democrats to pick up and regain the House majority. So even if this race does happen 47 to go to Rick Saccone by the end of the day, or if Conor Lamb just barely squeaks it out. Both sides acknowledge this environment very favorable for the Democrats going forward, and something that Republicans will have to deal with is to try to stem their losses ahead of November's elections, Anderson.
Rick Saccone is just appearing at his campaign headquarters. Let's listen in.
Wow. I'm applauding you. That's why I came out applauding. I'm applauding you all. I just came down to, you know, we're still fighting the fight. It's not over yet. We're going to fight all the way to the end. You know I never give up. You know my first race went into the night and we won that. And my second race was the same way. I mean, we're kind of used to this now, right? So that's it. We're not giving up. But I wanted to come down and thank you all. And I know you have, you got to go to work tomorrow, and everybody's got things to do. And I didn't want to keep you here later than you really need to be, because we're going to be working late into the night and into tomorrow. But I wanted to thank you all, because I know how hard you've worked. And I was out at some of the polls today. I know how cold it was, and I know you spent all those hours out there for us, for our family, and for all of you, and for the agenda that we're working on. And you never gave up. You never gave up on us. You never gave up on me. And I thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. You guys are amazing. I'm not kidding you. You're amazing. You're always so upbeat. You're salt of the earth. You're the best people in the world. I couldn't ask for a better blessing than to have supporters like you. And I'm pleased that you're still here. And again, I don't want you to try to hang on too much. I know many of you got to go, but I definitely wanted to come down and say to you that I thank you ever so much. And we're going to keep fighting, and don't give up, and we'll keep it up. We're going to win it. God bless you all. I'm not afraid.
Yeah. It's been a ride. Rick Saccone, they're leaving the stage to I'm Not Afraid. We're waiting for the final votes in Pennsylvania. More votes to be counted, absentee ballots being counted. We'll be right back.
We've got a key race alert. It's been incredibly close in the special election in the 18th Congressional District in Pennsylvania. Look at this. More than 220,000 ballots have already been counted. 99% of the vote is in, 99% plus. Conor Lamb, the Democrat, maintaining a lead of only 847 votes over the Republican Rick Saccone. Look at this, 111,875 votes for Conor Lamb, 111,028 votes for Rick Saccone. It's about as close as it gets. They're counting absentee ballots right now. Let's go over to John King. Take a closer look. They've counted the absentee ballots in Allegheny, that part of Allegheny County, the biggest 42% of the vote right there. But we're still waiting for the results from Washington County and Westmoreland County, where there are a few thousand absentee ballots that still need to be counted.
A little more than 3,000 total in these three counties, 1,800 of them here, 1,100 of them here. These are the two bigger counties, just 200 or so down here. So you have 847 vote lead for Conor Lamb, 49.9 to 49.5. That's a very close race as we go now. Allegheny, 100% done. They've counted the absentee ballots. This is the base of Conor Lamb's support. His team said he needed 56% to win. Guess what? They were wrong. He needed 57% to win, because he's going to need every one of these votes as we go through. So we're going to see these votes come in. Here's the issue. Okay, you got about 3,000. Some of them could be ruled invalid, so the ballpark math here. But about 3,000, 3,200 absentee ballots. Westmoreland County, Rick Saccone, got 57%. Washington County got 53%. Greene County got 58%, if you round that up. Impressive at first glance, underperforming President Trump in each of these three most Republican areas of the district. Here's the issue. When they count those absentee ballots, to make up that 847, again, this is ballpark. We're still waiting for a precinct or two here, so the numbers could change a little bit. But Rick Saccone is going to need 60%, perhaps as high as 63% among those absentee ballots when you add them all up. Say 62, 63%, even if it drops down to 60%, he didn't get 60% here, got 57. Didn't get 60% here, he got 53. Didn't get 60% here, he got 58, if you round that up. So in the count of the absentee ballot, ongoing now, not clear. I believe they're going to do this tomorrow, the last couple hundred. Perhaps we haven't heard from them if they're changed. But ongoing, Rick Saccone's going to have to get 60% plus, perhaps as high as 63%. So he's going to have to overperform among the absentee ballots than he did in the live vote today. Most people who study elections will tell you that's statistically unlikely, but it's not impossible. So we're going to have to count those votes.
And we're told those absentee ballots in Westmoreland County could come in and within the hour or so, maybe the half hour.
You spoke to the gentleman there who said he's counting them. They got to take them out. They got to scan them. There's a process. They take an oath and they count them. So yes, and again, 57% in the vote count. I said at the beginning of the night, Rick Saccone wants to be at 60% to feel good in this county because of how Republican it is. Just for the point of reference, again, this is not a presidential year, but President Trump gets 65% in this county. Rick Saccone is getting below 60% at 57%. It's that underperforming the presidential numbers, which is why he's losing the district right now. 847 vote lead into the absent. These are done. Just want to say it again. No more votes coming out of Allegheny County, which is the bluest, the most Democratic area of the district. 1, 2, and 3 to count. Rick Saccone's got to get 60% plus. So mathematically possible. Again, he's got to overperform in the counts ongoing right now than he did when people voted.
And Larry Spar, the director of elections in Washington County, told us earlier in the evening they were going to wait to count the absentee ballots, 1,195 absentee ballots in Washington County. They're going to wait till tomorrow morning, but they changed their mind. They're counting them right now. So we should get the results fairly soon from Washington County, Westmoreland County, and we'll see if Rick Saccone can make the difference up in this district vote.
I think they will call that the Blitzer effect. I think you convinced Larry. This was pretty important. Let's not wait till the morning because this race is so close. And again, it is possible with the absentee ballots counted here. You expect Rick Saccone to make up some ground. The question is, does he make up enough? If he gets 53% of the absentee ballots, it's not going to be enough. He's going to have to overperform that, and we wait for those counts. But as he said, as you just heard the candidate when he came down, he's not giving up the fight. He wants to see the final math, and who can blame him when you're down 847 and it's mathematically possible? Count the votes.
The old-fashioned way, you got to wait till you count the votes. There were no exit polls in this district. We're waiting. We're seeing the votes come in. The tally is critical right now. Whatever happens, Conor Lamb, the Democrat, has done incredibly well given the history of this congressional district.
Absolutely. Number one, the Democrats didn't run a candidate 2 years ago. They didn't run a candidate 4 years ago. Again, if you go back in time, this was Trump country. A 20-point victory, just shy of 20 points over Hillary Clinton in this corner of the state. The margin in this district, Donald Trump won Pennsylvania by 40,000 plus votes, 44,000 votes, 72,000 in this district alone. So you could make the case the reason Donald Trump turned Pennsylvania from blue for so long to red in 2016 is because of the 18th congressional district down here. It's very solid Trump country. One of the reasons Democrats are going to look at this tonight, Wolf, as they go forward, this district is 94% white. We already know Democrats have an advantage among women. Democrats have an advantage among African Americans. Democrats have an advantage among Latinos. Democrats have an advantage among millennials. If the Democrats are competitive in districts that are 94% white, blue-collar, working-class voters, in the midterm election year, the Republicans are in trouble. I just want to show you something. I want to come out and look at this while we're waiting for more of these votes to come in. Let's go back to 2016. Let's look at the House races here. This is the House nationally after the 2016 election. Keating Holland and others on our staff, our experts out there in the decision desk, looked at what are the districts in America are pretty much like Pennsylvania 18. Same demographics, same income levels, same mix of the voting, same economy, if you will. And these districts are quite similar. There's 20 of them. There's 20 of them. Now, there's 3 within Pennsylvania. The lines change between where we are tonight and the election. So set those aside. These are Democratic districts up here, very competitive Democratic districts. If you're a Republican, and this is where you live, and you're watching this tonight in a 94% white district that Donald Trump carried 16 months ago by 20 points, the Democrat is at least running even and may win this race. If you've been thinking about retiring, if you're worrying about how much money you need to raise, if you live in any of these districts tonight, you are looking at this, and you're calling your pollster, and you're calling your campaign finance person, and you are thinking, who's my Democratic opponent? Do I really want to do this? Is that really possible? That's the conversation happening tonight in these other districts because of what we are seeing play out tonight right here in Pennsylvania. Let me take this off, get you out of this, come back to our race, and come back to 2018.
There we are.
Boom.
847 vote advantage for the Democrat Conor Lamb over the Republican Rick Saccone. It's as close as it gets in Pennsylvania right now. We're standing by for officials to count the remaining absentee ballots. We'll get more of them coming in. Stay with us.
And 99% of the votes in. Conor Lamb ahead, 847. But the absentee ballots are being counted in a number of locations throughout Pennsylvania tonight. I want to check back in with our Jason Carroll covering the Democrat, Conor Lamb. We heard from Rick Saccone earlier. Has Conor Lamb spoken? I assume he has not. Do you expect him to if he hasn't?
Well, hopefully we expect him to. Certainly a number of those here in the crowd expect him to. Just a short while ago, though, we heard from the senior campaign advisor, Rich Fitzgerald, who took the stage and jokingly asked the crowd to hang in there. He said there's still a few votes to count, so that certainly would be an understatement. He then, Anderson, took the time to thank the supporters. He talked about the grassroots campaign the Conor Lamb folks have run. He also gave thanks to the labor community. At the end of the day, they really believe that some of those folks out there in the labor community in the 18th district can really help them eke out a win here. But he told the crowd to hang in there. You can hear them now chanting, Conor Lamb, Conor Lamb. He told the crowd to hang in there. He said, hang in there, he said, at least for another hour. Don't go home yet. But it looks like it might be much longer than another hour before this is all coming to an end. Anderson? Yeah, certainly. It's going to take several hours in some locations for the absentee ballots to be counted. Just in the minutes that we have remaining here with this particular panel, obviously our coverage is going to continue all through the night. If Conor Lamb is able to pull this out, and it is as close as it is, what's the message for Democrats and then for Republicans? Well, the message for Democrats is going to be that we won in a district that Donald Trump carried by 20 points, and so you better get nervous, Republicans, because the wave is coming. And the message from Republicans is going to be, well, we overperformed in a race that you all predicted we were going to lose. But the Democrats, rightly so, will say, are you kidding me? But Republicans can also say, well, look, you ran a Democrat who basically ran like a Republican on a lot of issues. Right. So the message here for the Democrats, first of all, we should just do the big, most important thing for Democrats, which is that if Conor Lamb wins this, they're only going to need 23 seats, a net gain of, to win the House of Representatives in November instead of 24. So it makes the math one step closer for the Democrats.
Not really.
This seat disappears.
This goes away.
Right,
yeah.
So it's going to be redistricted. Well, but even with, depending how the redistricting is seen, it very well could be to 23 seats. But the Republicans are going to walk away saying, buckle up. Yeah. This is, all the headwinds that we've been talking about are here. They're blowing in our face. We feel it in ways that we never thought we could, in districts and places we never thought we could. So that's going to be the message for Republicans. Some of those, you were talking about the Senate earlier, Jason, some of those Senate Democrats that are red state Democrats running in places Donald Trump won, they're going to see tonight this guy, Conor Lamb, won in a Trump plus 20 district. So if I am Claire McCaskill or John Tester or Joe Manchin, what lessons can I learn from the way he ran in this Trump plus 20 district that I can try to fortify myself for November? Yeah, and if you're a Republican also, too, what is the message? I mean, the focus has been on, well, Democrats don't have a message. What is the Republican winning message? They thought it was going to be tax cuts. It looks like it might not be enough here. Also, they ran on, sanctuary cities and Conor Lamb being soft on crime and he'd raise your taxes. That stuff didn't work quite enough. I mean, we'll see what the returns are, but they've got to figure out a better message. Michael, you're going to be on the radio in Pennsylvania early in the morning.
Yes, I am. Thank you for that reminder. And a 550 train. The message is the House is on fire for Republicans. And in each one of these races, regardless of whether there was a pickup, the Democrats have outperformed the Republican lean, the partisan lean in each one of these districts. And that's something the president's going to have to answer to.
It is not over yet. 99% of the votes counted. The remaining absentee ballots could decide this race. We're expecting them any minute and in the hours ahead as well. We'll be right back.
All right, some new votes have just come in from Westmoreland County out in this 18th congressional district, and Conor Lamb's lead has gone down to now only 579 votes. He's ahead of the Republican Rick Saccone. 579 votes as a result of these new ballots that have just been counted in Westmoreland County. We knew there were absentee ballots in Westmoreland County. We knew that there were absentee ballots in Washington County. We also knew that a couple of precincts were still awaiting the results. We don't know what these latest numbers are from.
I believe it's the two precincts. We were at 98% without them. We're at 100% now. We're waiting for the absentee ballots still to be counted, but Rick Saccone moved up to 57% now. That's where the votes were added, so he cut somewhat into the lead. We're at 800 and something before, 579 now, and 3,200 absentee ballots that we know still to be counted. 1,800 of them here, there's 1,100 of them here. about 200 of them down here. Here and here, the counts are ongoing. In Westmoreland and in Washington, the counts are ongoing. We expect at least some of those results pretty soon. So again, we were saying earlier that Rick Saccone had to get 60% plus. I have to redo the math. This changes the math a little bit, brings it down a little bit, and he's getting 57% here, 53% here. Got to count those absentees.
We'll see what happens with those absentee ballots. It doesn't get much closer than this, Jake. The absentee ballots in these two counties potentially could make the difference.
Potentially. We have the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee declaring for themselves that Conor Lamb is the winner. The Republican counterpart saying that it's too close to call. The larger trend here that we can look to is the fact that this is a district that Donald Trump won with by 19 percentage points. And the fact that this is so competitive right now shows that the momentum is with the Democratic base. And while President Trump is probably watching and thinking that he helped turn this around, it's still going to be very competitive.
That's right. We've had a lot of numbers tonight. I'm going to give you one more, 114. That's the number of House districts that are even more competitive, a lot more competitive than the one that we have seen tonight. That is why, despite, regardless of the outcome, Republicans at the end of tonight are going to be incredibly nervous across the country.
And our coverage is going to continue with Don Lemon and CNN Tonight in New York.
All right, thank you very much, Jake and Dan. I appreciate that. Much more in our election night coverage right here on CNN. The breaking news, a nail-biter night of high drama in Pennsylvania playing out right now. It's not over yet. Now it's all going to come down to the absentee ballots, which are being counted and reported. And we're going to do it live on CNN. They're being counted and reported now. This is CNN Tonight. I'm Don Lemon. This election was not even supposed to be close. It should have been a slam dunk for Republicans. Instead, tonight, if you care about politics in this country, you are hanging on this race because of what it could mean for the fall midterms, what will play out in the midterms. Pennsylvania's 18th district went for Trump by 20 points. Can you believe it's this close now? By 20 points. But tonight's race between the Democrat Conor Lamb and Republican Rick Saccone is about as close as it can be. We want to get straight to CNN's John King. He has been posted at the Magic Wall all evening. He has all the information for us. Gary Tuckman as well at the county election headquarters in Allegheny County. Good evening to both of you, or good morning, depending on where you are in the country. John, you first. Incredibly tight race, too close to call. Break down the numbers for us. What's outstanding?
Incredibly tight, Don. A little confusion about what's outstanding, but let's go through where we are. By our count as we speak, 579 vote lead for the Democrat Conor Lamb. Nail-biter, to say the least, 49.8, 49.6. The question is what's outstanding. I'm told that we believe that these are the final numbers in Westmoreland County, including absentee ballots they counted tonight. We're going to double-check that and triple-check that. That's what we were told at the moment. If that's the case, in the Westmoreland County ballots are in, then we go over here to Washington County, a Republican county that Rick Saccone won with 53% of the vote. Outstanding there, 1,195 absentee ballots here. 203 absentee ballots here. The question is, can Rick Saccone, sorry, Don, let me bring that back up for you full size. Can Rick Saccone win those absentee ballots by enough of a margin to overcome that? It would take a mathematical miracle, 60% plus, even greater than that, I believe. So at the moment, the Democrats are confident Conor Lamb can hold on to this win. Remember, Donald Trump won this district 16 months ago by 20 points. The Democrat is at least even tonight, ahead by 579 votes. Republicans say, let's count all of these. Then they'll want to double-check and triple-check the math in the morning. But as of now, because of this, because of the big advantage in this slice, not all of Allegheny County, just the southern part of the county is in the district. Conor Lamb ran 57% here. You see the margin, 58, 655, 43. The 15,000 vote margin plus in Allegheny County at the moment, giving Conor Lamb a very narrow lead, 579 votes, absentees to be counted here and here. The Saccone campaign says, we're still in this, we'll continue the fight. The Democrats think when they finish this count, that might shrink a bit, but they're going to have pulled off, Don, what would be the first big, stunning upset, psychologically momentum builder of 2018. But let's wait for the final math. Could be the morning.
Yeah, absolutely. Rick Saccone came out moments ago and said, you know, it's not over yet. Are there enough outstanding ballots that he could win at this point, that he could pull off a victory, John?
The answer is yes, Don, but the question is the math. Again, he's going to have to win a giant percentage. I haven't done the final math because we're triple checking in here, but when Westmoreland's absentee ballots were still out, he had to win 63%. If he shrunk the lead a little bit and you're down to these 2 counties left, again, at least 60%, probably higher than that number. He only won 53% today in the live vote. Can he so overperform among absentees? It's possible. It generally doesn't happen. Same down here. He won 58%, a small number of the votes, only 203 down here. Can he get a significantly higher percentage than he did in the live ballot? It's mathematically possible. People who track elections say these things tend to run about the same, maybe give or take a few points, give or take 5 or 10 points. That's unlikely. But when the margin's 579, if you're the candidate on the low end right now, you're going to wait till they count every last one. Absolutely. And like I said, then you're going to send your lawyers back and your team back to triple and quadruple check in those other counties.
Great reporting. That's why we have you here. John King. Yeah, John, you're the best. Thank you so much. It's going to be it's been a long night. It's going to be a long day for you tomorrow as well. Let's bring in now CNN senior political analyst, Mr. Mark Preston, and our political commentators, Bakari Sellers, Amanda Carpenter, and Scott Jennings. Mark, what happens now? The question is, so he said it's about the math. Right. So can Conor Lamb go to bed the winner and wake up a loser possibly?
Yeah, no question about it. Because we have to see, you know, obviously we have to see what the count is and figure out what the percentage is that's going to come out of it. Right now it looks like he's probably going to win, but who knows? I mean, we thought Donald Trump wouldn't be in the White House today, and guess what? Donald Trump is in the White House today. What I do think is interesting, and what I think is more important, is how this is going to be spun tomorrow by the Democrats and the Republicans. Now, when you go back to the beginning, Republicans, as you said, this should have been an easy win for them. But the tide turned, and everyone was looking at this race, and they thought the Democrats would have an easy win because they had such a great candidate, and it really is a great candidate. Republicans didn't have a great candidate. I think that if Republicans do lose, Don, that I don't think it's a 10-alarm fire right now for the Republican Party. I think they're going to look at this and say, okay, we need to make sure that our candidates are better prepared and that they know how to deliver the message. And in places where Trump is wanted and needed, needs to.
It is a multi-alarm fire, though.
Oh, my God.
Well, it's not 10.
We knew.
It is a multi-alarm.
Yes, absolutely. We knew going into tonight, though, that Republicans had their backs against the wall, and there's a good chance they're going to lose the House of Representatives. But I don't think that things have changed from last night to where we stand tonight.
I will say there's one thing that I question walking into this race. Even though Trump went all in, did the rally, Republican committees spent a ton of money, all these consultants were throwing this guy under the bus as hard as they could going into the race. And so clearly their projections were off. And I sort of wonder if he does lose this race, were these Republicans trashing his prospects in the run-up to the vote? That could be the difference.
Yeah, but he's got to win 70% of the 1,400 outstanding votes.
Yeah, unlikely. Mathematically possible, but unlikely. You know, I think about this race in the context of the great Winston Churchill movie that just came out, and I think about Churchill saying at one point in the movie, when will the lesson be learned? And in this case, candidate quality matters. At the local level here, there were 3 people looking at this race, and the district committee that chose the candidate chose the third guy that everybody wanted. There were 2 other candidates, both of who probably win this race tonight. That's number 1. Number 2, Democrats did something here that was smart. They didn't go with the ultra-liberal candidate. They went with a moderate, you know, kind of Republican-light type candidate who matched the district, who ran away from Pelosi, who had to sound not like anything you hear out of the Democrats in Washington to win. So a couple of lessons here. Yes, if you have a suburb in your district and you're a Republican running for Congress, watch out. Yeah. There's no way to put mayonnaise on that crap sandwich. But candidate quality matters, and the Democrats got it right and the Republicans got it wrong.
I mean, he's not wrong about that. I mean, politically, there was not much difference there is not much difference between
I just appreciate all 3 of my colleagues tonight for just painting this picture that is as rosy as possible for the Republican Party. The fact is, it's amazing how Saccone all of a sudden isn't a great candidate. I mean, relatively speaking, I mean, he may not be a great candidate to compare it to some others, but, you know, compared to a Todd Akin or compared to a Roy Moore, I mean, he is a legitimate candidate. Yeah. He actually served in our armed forces. He actually was an elected official prior to this. It's not as if he ran against just
It doesn't make you a good candidate.
Well, congratulations on constructing the lowest bar.
I hear you, but regardless, at the end of the night, Republicans, it may not be a 10-alarm fire. I hope that they walk out of this with some level of confidence. They should not. There are 119 districts, 119 districts that are held by Republicans today that are closer than the 20-point margin by which Donald Trump won this district. 119. That means all 119 need to understand that tomorrow somebody can file against them and they can be beaten. Democrats do have to learn a message from this race, and that is my fear. That's always my fear with Democrats, is that we screw the proverbial pooch. But what we have to realize is a few things. We can't forget the lessons of Alabama, which is that African-American women, we have to give them a full-throated reason, and people of color to come out and vote. We also, and we're not a party of or, but and we have to focus on working class voters, as Conor Lamb is showing us today. And the last thing is, one of the best footnotes about this race, and I'm not sure I've heard it mentioned at all tonight on CNN, it may have been, but I'm not sure I've heard it, is that there are only 6 millennials elected to the United States Congress. Only 6. And Conor Lamb will add to that number, or he'll be number 6.
Are you trying to make his point? Because when he said he ran away from Nancy Pelosi, he's not running as a traditional Democrat,
and
which means he's
fine.
not.
You know
all the older people in Washington, he's running a different race.
I have beat this drum, this proverbial drum, for the last year. The fact is, the Democratic Party and our leadership and our proverbial leadership, they're all old. I mean, I don't make any bones about that. Look, you want to talk about Hillary Clinton, you want to talk about Joe Biden, Elizabeth Warren, the list goes on and on and on. Chuck Schumer, the list goes on and on and on. Our party leadership has to get younger. We have to become more versatile, and we have to have a message that resonates across all boards. And Conor Lamb, just one more point real quick. We have to be a party of Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, Conor Lamb, and Joe Manchin. Yeah. Like, I want everybody under the table.
So see, and that's, let me pick that up there, because I think that's incredibly important, not only for the Democratic Party, but for the Republican Party as well. Is that what we've seen tonight, regardless of who wins, is that you can't go into a district and just because somebody is backed by the progressive wing of their party, if you're a Democrat, think that they're going to win that seat. You have to pick people who are going to fit the mold of the district. And you know what? If the Democratic Party, is going to be the Big Tent party, like the Republican Party talks all the time, then they're going to have to accept the likes of Conor Lamb into their party.
I was talking to Mark McKinnon, I think it was last night, and he said, well, it disproves that all politics is local and that it's national. But I don't agree with that. Sorry, Mark, I don't agree with that. I think all politics is local, and this shows you that it's local. You have to put a candidate in that fits the place you're running. But and look at, you can't, Scott, he won, Donald Trump won this district by 20 points. Even if Conor Lamb loses, I still think it's a win for Democrats, at least with momentum, and Republicans should be concerned about it.
The narrative out of tonight, Saccone would have had to have won by 6 or 7 points plus for the narrative to shift towards the Republicans. Narrowing a district like this is a terrible narrative for the Republican Party, and there's no question about that. There's no way to run away from it. But right now is the wake-up call for every Republican. As Bakari said, there's a lot of Republicans out there in districts that look a lot like this. Some suburbs, some rural. Maybe they haven't had a tough race. Remember, a lot of Republican House members got elected in 2010, 2012. They've never faced a tough re-elect, maybe no re-elect at all. You're going to have one this year. If there's a silver lining, wake-up call. Do not take your race for granted, even if you've always been able to do that, because the environment won't allow it.
And you cannot look. One of the things that's amazing about being the party in control is that we see these dips. But you can always go to the bully pulpit, which is 1600, Pennsylvania. But what we've seen is that you had Donald Trump fly in. You had Ivanka Trump fly in. You had Mike Pence fly in. You even had Don Jr. campaign there, smashing a bowl of ice cream in a hairnet. Right? Everybody.
Talking to chocolate bunnies.
Everybody came down. And I think one of the messages that comes away from this, and we talked a little bit about it offset, is that there is a level of toxicity with this White House.
Yeah,
and there's a level of toxicity amongst suburban white voters.
Absolutely. And this is a big question. In a district that was 20 points for Trump, when Trump devotes so many resources to it, if the race is still close, Republicans across the board have to ask themselves going into 2018 and 2020, how close will you get to Trump? Trump probably needs to win this district more than the Republican candidate does, so that he can be welcome when he wants to go campaign himself in these Republican areas.
Let me ask you this, Amanda. What happens tomorrow when House Republicans go to work and they are up for re-election in 8 months? Do they say, maybe it's time to retire?
Yeah, this is so close. I think you're going to see retirements either way. I think right now you're up to 38. Even distinguished members like Trey Gowdy, who had a prominent position doing things he liked. That a lot of Republicans in leadership positions who do need to work closely with the White House. Those are the ones who are leaving, and so
What do you think, Scott?
Yeah, I mean, I think that if you're getting at the end of your career and you don't want to deal with it and full with a rough environment, you're going to see some retirements. Let's not forget, though, here, Trump aside, history is already moving against the Republicans. I think it's only been 2 midterms since the Civil War when the party in power didn't lose seats. And so the Republicans go into this historically in a generic environment. Historically speaking, they should lose. They should lose seats. The question is, can the Democrats turn that into something more than it should otherwise be? And that's the questions we're seeing answered by races like this, that the Democrats want to try to make it bigger than maybe it ought to be.
All right, stick around, everyone. We come back much more on this razor-tight congressional race in Pennsylvania and what it means for a Republican Party increasingly nervous about the midterms. We'll be right back. So here's our breaking news. All eyes on Pennsylvania's special congressional race tonight, where it's all coming down to the absentee ballots. Let's go to CNN's John King. John is at the Magic Wall. John, there are just under 1,400 absentee ballots outstanding in these counties. How likely is it that Saccone will get enough of these votes to make up a difference?
Mathematically possible, Don, but unlikely. And let's do the math first. Let's start with where we are. 579 vote lead at the moment for Conor Lamb. You see it right up there. Now we're going to have to go a little old school here. From the best of our information, 1,398 absentee ballots still to be counted. Most of them from Washington County, 200 from Greene County. The count here is ongoing. We don't expect these until the morning. So, just again, I'm going to stop right there for a minute. In Washington County, Rick Saccone got 53% of the vote tonight. In Greene County, Rick Saccone got 58%, if you round that up, of the vote tonight. So, he should be optimistic. These are places he ran strong. Almost 1,400 ballots left, 579 vote lead. Here's the problem. If Rick Saccone got 70%, way overperformed, way overperformed. If he got 70% of those ballots tonight and those absentee ballots, he would come up with, in the ballpark here, that's 979 at 70%. Conor Lamb would get 419 at 70% and 30%. So what's the difference there? That would mean a net gain at 70% of the absentee ballots left. That would be a net gain for Rick Saccone of 560, which would leave him 19 votes short. If he got 70%. Again, that would be overperforming and overperforming. So is it mathematically possible? Yes. Would that count have to defy everything that happened at the ballot box today by a significant margin? Yes. So mathematically possible. At 70%, though, even if Rick Saccone wins 7 out of 10 of those remaining absentee ballots, he will fall short. So your expectation is he will make up the lead. Can he get that? I wouldn't bet on it.
John King. John, thank you very much. We'll check back when we get more information. I want to go to CNN's Jason Carroll now. He's at Conor Lamb's headquarters. Jason, what's happening? Are we expecting him to speak anytime soon?
Well, we've just gotten word from a campaign source that Conor Lamb is expected to head out in just a few minutes. And in fact, just a few minutes ago, we saw over there in the corner, we saw Conor Lamb's brother peek his head out there just for a short moment before he headed back in. But Conor Lamb is expected to address the crowd in just a few minutes from now. Just a short while ago, his senior campaign advisor, Rich Fitzgerald, took to the stage and thanked all of those who came out to support the campaign. He talked about the grassroots nature of the campaign. And I can tell you, Don, as I hear chants throughout the room of Conor, Conor, all throughout this night, even in the very beginning when the numbers were far more favorable to Conor Lamb, there was a sense of optimism among many people here throughout the night, even as the numbers became tighter and tighter and tighter, and it's become a real nail-biter. Behind the scenes, there's still this feeling of confidence, the feeling that the work that they've done to reach out to the union members throughout the district has really paid off. So once again, just a few moments from now, expecting Conor Lamb to take the stage. Just a short while ago, his campaign advisor came out and told the crowd to hang on. They know that they've been waiting for a very, very long time, but told the crowd to hang on, that Conor Lamb is on his way. Don?
Jason Carroll, we're glad they're watching. We can see they're on a delay, and when they see themselves, they start screaming. So they're watching CNN, and they're ready. Thank you very much, Jason Carroll. I want to bring in now CNN's chief political correspondent, Dana Batch, and senior political commentator, David Axelrod. Good evening or good morning to both of you. Dana.
Is there really a difference now?
It's not. It's all the same. I mean, this really is a nail-biter, and this was a major test for this president going into the midterms. What's your takeaway here?
Yeah, I mean, it's a test, I think, not so much for the president, but it is a test on both sides. Number one, for Democrats, whether they can harness the resistance, the energy that is very real and very fervent across the country. And at least now, the answer, no matter how this turns out, the answer is yes, because this is a district that Donald Trump won by 20 points. It's a district that has not gone into the Dem column, since 2002. So regardless of how this turns out, it is a yes. Republicans I talk to say, again, regardless of how this turns out, they're hoping it is a wake-up call to their party, to their candidates, to get focused and to get with it. The issue, though, Don, or maybe the question is whether or not the wake-up call for some of those Republican candidates is going to be, I'm out of here, that they're going to decide that they're going to retire rather than run in a district, many of which have a margin that is much more favorable to them. But if they're looking at what's going on now, if Conor Lamb can win, or the Republican can't win, or at least comes close in a district like Pennsylvania 18, then they're in big trouble.
To get focused, to get with it, David, if you agree with Dana's analysis, on what?
Well, look, I agree with Dana's analysis, but I also know, having been on the wrong side of a wave once, that there's only so much you can do. If there is a national dynamic, and there seems to be, remember, this race has to be put in the context of every election that's taken place since Donald Trump became president. And what we've seen is a consistent pattern of Democrats outperforming what should be their partisan performance in districts. You've seen 37 state legislative seats that have flipped from Republican to Democrat, and even in seats where Republicans won, they didn't win by the margins that the president won by and that a typical Republican could win by. So there's something going on out there that is bigger than just this race, and that's what would concern me if I were Republicans. Also, this suburban deal is real. You look at Allegheny County, or the suburban portion of Allegheny County in this district. Donald Trump carried it by 4 points against Hillary Clinton. Conor Lamb won in a landslide tonight with 57% of the vote. A lot of these suburban areas are going to be battlegrounds in this upcoming election. So there are a lot of things that I think would trouble me if I were a Republican thinking about the fall tonight.
All right. David, Dan, I want you to stick around, because much more when we come back on our breaking news. A nail-biter congressional race in Pennsylvania. This whole thing could come down to the absentee ballots. It will. Here's the breaking news right now. The special congressional election in Pennsylvania that's got everybody on the edge of their seats tonight. The Democrat Conor Lamb with a slim lead over the Republican Rick Saccone. Back with me now, Dana Bash and David Axelrod. David, Republicans at the White House are saying that they are pleased with the narrow margin tonight. A GOP official told our Jeff Zelny, this isn't a blowout for now. We'll happily take it. With all the resources that were poured into this, there needs to what there is to be pleased about. I'm trying to get the quote right, sorry, and it's late. So why are they happy about this?
Well, I don't think they're happy about it. I think that they're trying to make the most of a bad situation. They take some solace in the fact that there were some polls that showed a wider margin than we saw tonight for Lamb, and the president came there. They'll claim credit for that, and there probably was a little bit of enthusiasm generated by the president's visit. I don't know that, but when you net it out, what the president being in the White House means for Republicans versus his ability to get a few points for candidates, I'm not sure the trade-off is good for Republicans. Look, the interesting thing that happened in this race is that Conor Lamb rooted himself in the district, reflected the district very, very well. And the Republicans tried to nationalize this race, and they spent $10 million hitting Lamb with negative ads, trying to tie him to Nancy Pelosi, trying to tie him to higher taxes, trying to tie him to weak on crime, all of these familiar themes. It didn't work. And all that money and all those attacks didn't work. And that's something that they're going to have to contemplate. Democrats, on the other hand, ought to take some lessons from this, because Lamb did reflect his district, and he was allowed by the party to do that. And I think that is, in a big, diverse country, you have to do that to be a winning party.
Yeah,
and,
I mean,
hopefully they'll derive some lessons from that.
Go ahead, Dan.
I totally agree with David. And Tom Perez, the Democratic Party chairman, was on with us earlier this evening, or maybe last evening, depending on how we calculate the time right now. And he was very open about the notion of Conor Lamb looking to camera, as he did in the ad that he put out, saying that he is not going to support Nancy Pelosi. That he said every candidate on our side is going to have to run the kind of race that they feel that they need to. And in a plus 20 district, plus 20 meaning for Trump, that is the kind of race that the Democrat there felt that he had to run.
So, Dana, let me ask you this. Having said what you said about Conor Lamb looking straight to camera saying, I'm not going to support Nancy Pelosi, and David just said, well, maybe, you know, Donald Trump did drum up some enthusiasm by arriving there. But how can you say that it actually helped this candidate when Donald Trump won by 20 points, and yet and still we're at this? Maybe he actually hurt him by going there. Maybe he didn't need to help to go there.
Well, look, we're going to have to really dissect these numbers once we get a better sense of what they are. But I think that just the fact that we are waiting for the absentee ballots, which, by the way, our David Chalian reminded me before we came on, had to be in by Friday, and Friday was just as the president was signing his tariff policy, which he was hoping was going to help with these exact kind of voters, union voters and so forth. And it was before the president actually went to the district to campaign there. The fact that we're waiting for these absentee ballots means that the sort of live vote, the vote that happened today, was tighter than both sides expected. That is why Republicans feel that, and particularly Trump Republicans that I've talked to, and I'm sure you have as well, heard from them, saying that they believe that the president's visit helped. But at the end of the day, the president helping a candidate to maybe get over a finish line where he, the president, won by 20 points and it hasn't been in Democratic hands for 14 years, isn't a whole lot to crow about. And that's why, candidly, most Republicans are saying no matter what happens at the end of the day, whether it goes to the Democratic side or not, it is a canary in the coal mine for Republicans.
Yeah. So, but David, you know, there are many who say that don't overthink this, don't overplay this as it relates to the midterms. Do you think this is a sign of things to come?
Yeah, I really do. I think it is true that one should not, every race has its own characteristics and one shouldn't overplay any one race. But as I say, when you put it in the context of what we've seen over the past year and all the elections that have been held, there is a consistent pattern. And, you know, I remember in 2010 when Scott Brown won the Senate seat that Ted Kennedy had held after Kennedy had died. And we tried to spin it as, you know, our candidate wasn't particularly good. This was a special circumstance. But we knew that it meant something. And this means something as well.
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much. When we come back, much more on tonight's incredibly tight congressional race in Pennsylvania. Democrat Conor Lamb with a slim lead in a race that should have been a slam dunk for the GOP. We're going to be live at Lamb's headquarters. That's next. Here's our breaking news. Democrat Conor Lamb with a slim lead in Pennsylvania's special congressional race in a district President Trump won by about 20 points in 2016. I want to bring in our sitting contributor Selena Zito at Conor Lamb's headquarters. She has been talking us through this. You live in Pennsylvania 18. Selena, good morning to you. This is your backyard. Give us what you think, your perspective of what happened on the ground tonight in this race.
Well, I think what's sort of some of the bigger lessons about this race are that that the Democrats have found a way to have a successful campaign with a moderate Democrat who is able to have a good message, able to talk about economic populism, and avoid talking about Trump in a negative way. It worked very well in this district, and I think it can be a model for other districts with similar sort of swing electorates. I think the Republican lesson is that they need a better message. They need one that's more aspirational, that reminds voters that they have their back, and talks about the things that they accomplished. There was none of that. I live in the district. I saw the ads. They were all very dark and sort of negative, and they didn't tell a story about what they've accomplished. I don't think that the Republican Party gets who they are yet. I don't think they understand that they have a more populist coalition.
You say the deciding swing voter and swing vote in this race is a union voter. Explain that to us.
Yeah. So in the union vote in this district is very high. It's the union family vote, so it's a collective vote. People all vote the same way in their families, in their communities. And they are still very strong for Donald Trump. But their problem, unique to this district, is that the Republican candidate, Rick Saccone, is a right-to-work. That's where he falls in his policies. And unions view that as not having their back. So you see the voters swinging away from Saccone and Republicans and towards Lamb. And it's a very local race. Despite the national attention, they have the candidates have kept it localized, and that sort of hurt Saccone because he's not on the same page as Trump is when it comes to the union issues.
Mm-hmm. The people you talked to who backed the Democrat Conor Lamb also voted for President Trump in 2016. Are they still behind President Trump?
Yeah. Absolutely. They just look at this as continuing that sort of populist trend of going with the person that they feel is more aspirational and it has their back more than someone who is out of touch with their needs and concerns.
Selena, you certainly had a read on this race, and we appreciate your perspective. Thank you very much for joining us. And we're waiting for more votes to be counted and reported tonight. Still about 1,400 outstanding votes left in Washington and Greene counties. And as we've been told here, we're going to get the results from Washington County at some point tonight. Let's get back with the panel now for some discussion. Mark Preston, Bakari Sellers, Amanda Carpenter, and Scott Jennings. So the deciding voter, the swing voter, the union vote, she said right there. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so, look, union voters are primarily in the Democratic constituency. However, in some places like Pennsylvania, we have seen them peel off. We only have to go back to 2008. I mean, remember, this was the place that Barack Obama described that people were clinging to their guns and religion back in 2008. That still sits in the bottom pit of many people's stomach. So they don't look at the Democratic Party necessarily as supporting them. In this case, so I do think that's really interesting about the right to work
Mark, let's stand by. Conor Lamb coming to the podium down in Pennsylvania now. There you see him there. People are cheering. Of course, he's in Cannonsburg. Rick Saccone already came out and said there's a long way to go. He was still very hopeful. Conor Lamb with a slim lead now in this special election here in Pennsylvania's 18th. We're waiting word to see what he has to say, if he's going to declare himself the winner or say we have to sit by and wait, but he certainly should feel good about what he's accomplished in a district that the current president, a Republican, won by 20 points, and here he is with a slim lead in a race that he could very well win by morning once the election officials there clarifies and declares who the winner is. Let's listen to Conor Lamb right now.
Well, it took a little longer than we thought, but we did it. You did it. You did it. You did it. I see so many great friends out here. 4 months ago, right after we won the Democratic nomination, before we ever even had a chance to open an office, the grassroots leaders that are in this room tonight came to us and they said, print us something, print anything so we can get out there and start canvassing. They said, Get going, they said, or we're going without you. Well, we went together, and I can't thank you enough. We followed what I learned in the Marines. Leave no one behind. We went everywhere. We talked to everyone. We invited everyone in. And we found that there is public support for programs like Social Security and Medicare that's nearly universal, because these programs are universal. They are America's way of saying, we are all in this together. Our issue in this campaign is common ground. We fought to find common ground, and we found it almost everywhere. Democrats, Republicans, independents, each of us Americans. I've heard it over and over. I've heard over and over, Conor, the job... I've heard, Conor, the job you're running for is the House of Representatives. So if you get down there, do the job. Do the job. Okay, I will. Mission accepted. People are so tired of the shouting on TV and in our politics. It's amazing what happens when you're in a room with real people who have real aspirations and real troubles. There's lots of ideas. There's no angry shouting. Our job in Congress is to attack the problems, not each other. People want to be heard. They want to talk about serious things and honest solutions, not be drowned out by dark money, distorting the truth, and telling lies to our children. I'm proud that you helped me refuse corporate PAC money. You helped us raise millions in small contributions, 86,000 donations. Almost all of them small, every one of them in the open, just like our campaign. We were able to campaign the way American democracy is supposed to be. It's supposed to be for you, not just on TV, but in your town halls, at Legion posts, in small auditoriums, on your street, at your door. And side by side with us, at each step of the way, were the men and women of organized labor. Organized labor built Western Pennsylvania. Let me tell you something. Tonight, they have reasserted their right to have a major part in our future. These unions have fought for decades for wages, benefits, working conditions, basic dignity, and social justice. Thank you. Thank you. You have brought me into your ranks to fight with you. Let me tell you something else. I am proud to be right there with you. Thank you. Let me finish with this. I'm a Pennsylvania Democrat, a proud Western Pennsylvania Democrat. This is the party of my grandfather. He believed in FDR, who taught us all. He taught us all that people have a right to know that their government walks on their side of the street. What that means is I'll work on the problems our people face, secure their jobs and pensions, protect their family, and I will work with anyone to do that. We're practical people. We're serious people. And tonight, we celebrate regaining our voice and our vote in the great business of governing this country we love. Thank you.
Here we go. That's Conor Lamb there giving a victory speech. And I said, is he going to declare victory or is he going to wait for election officials? What did you think, Amanda?
A bold move. Just go out and get ahead of anyone else. Yeah, but it's just funny. If you were a Republican looking at this, Bakari's going to blow his mind right now. You know, Donald Trump can't save you. Even in a +20 district, Donald Trump can't save you. And so Congressman-elect Lamb, I guess.
Yeah, but before we got to him, they announced him as Congressman-elect Lamb.
Yeah, can I just say
I'm over here with all these Republicans. Just go, just go.
I know, I appreciate it.
Let me bask in this glory, but go ahead.
Let us say this. CNN is not calling the race.
Right.
We're absolutely not calling the race. We're going to wait to see what happens in the morning.
Or whenever election officials call it.
Or whenever election officials call it, of course. But what we're seeing here right now is a play by Conor Lamb and the National Democratic Party to go in and just say, we won, let's end it right now, and let's just try to defeat any effort to try to contest this.
All right. Stand by, Democrat. We'll be right back. Our breaking news tonight, Democrat Conor Lamb declares victory in Pennsylvania's special congressional race, a race that's too close to call until all the votes are counted. We expect to get results from Washington County's absentee ballot sometime tonight. So let's bring in now CNN political commentators Van Jones and Steve Cortez. It has not been officially called. CNN has not declared it, but Conor Lamb, Van, saying, hey, listen, I won. Where does the momentum stand at this point in the midterms?
Well, look, I mean, you know, he's smart to go ahead and try and stake that claim and get that psychological victory while everybody's watching, the whole world is watching. But, you know, we're going to wait to call it. I will say this, though. To the Republican Party, to people who've been trying to figure out every way in the world to defend Donald Trump and to pretend that, you know, he's doing a great job, that rumbling sound you hear is not a train passing by. It is not a jet overhead. It is not a thunderstorm on the horizon. That is the anti-Trump resistance coming down out of the mountains to any voting booth it can find. It grabs, it shakes upside down, it turns it around because people are tired. Yes, there's a big part of this that was local, but there's an energy here. You had so many women on the ground who've never been involved before who got involved. You have the labor movement feeling its back is against the wall. They got a big Supreme Court case coming down. They're trying to assert themselves. All the backdrop that Trump has created by, you know, basically in some ways embarrassing some Republicans and outraging a lot of Democrats gives a lift to all the local effort. And it is just getting started.
Here in New York, it could be the D train, which goes right by the building.
That's not what it is.
Well, I was giving you the Democrat D train. Come on, Dan, get with it.
Oh, okay, I got you.
So listen, Steve, how is this result? How is this not a disaster for the GOP?
Oh, well, look, I don't think it's a disaster. I think it's a bad night. I'm going to be very honest here. I do think it's a bad night for the GOP. But I think it's also a good night for Conor Lamb. And because of the kind of race he ran and because of the kind of candidate he is. He mentioned something about the Democratic Party of his grandparents. I thought that was very telling because it reminded me a lot of my maternal grandmother, Irish Catholic Democrat who worshipped FDR and JFK. The party of her day has largely disappeared today. Now, Conor Lamb seems to want to resurrect that, very smartly so. I think he's the kind of candidate that she could vote for, somebody who's moderate. But here's the problem the Democrats are going to face. They don't have very many Conor Lambs, and they have a whole lot of Nancy Pelosi's and Elizabeth Warren's. They have a lot of old, tired, hard left social justice warrior types. So I think it's going to be hard to replicate the success that they see in Pennsylvania 18 in other races.
He did say, I'm a Western Pennsylvania Democrat, which, and he says, I'm also, but he said unions built Western Pennsylvania. So, yeah, point taken. Listen, gentlemen, thank you very much. I want you to stick around for me. When we come back, much more on the special congressional race in Pennsylvania, Democrat Conor Lamb declaring victory. But until every vote is counted, this race is too close to call. This is CNN Tonight. I'm Don Lemon, 1 a.m. here on the East Coast, live with breaking news. Democrat Conor Lamb declaring victory in the special congressional race in Pennsylvania. But this race is really just too close to call until every single vote is counted. We expect to get results from Washington County's absentee ballots sometime tonight, so continue to follow. It is a nail-biter. I want to get right to CNN's Jason Carroll. He's at Lamb headquarters, and back with me, Van Jones and Steve Cortez. Okay, so Jason, you first. Talk to me about this close race, this nail-biter. But minutes ago, you're at Lamb headquarters. He came out, he declared victory. I mean, we expect we may get more outstanding votes even tonight, but he's confident.
Well, the campaign feels confident that they have the votes, that the math is in their favor. They waited and debated for some time before finally coming out and Conor Lamb declaring victory. He did his part to talk about the nature of his campaign, called it a grassroots campaign. He thanked the labor community, which the campaign really has felt all along has really given them a boost throughout this campaign season. And he also talked about the need for the political climate to change. He talked about that, saying people are tired of the shouting on TV. He said, quote, especially in politics, he said, our job is to attack the problems, not each other. The crowd obviously loved it. It's been a nail-biter all night long. In the beginning, Conor Lamb enjoyed what some thought was a comfortable lead, and throughout the night and into the early morning, we saw that lead erode. Throughout the night, though, the campaign, as I've been checking in with them from point to point, felt fairly confident throughout the evening that the numbers were going to weigh in their favor. That's why by the end of the night and early into this morning, Conor Lamb has once again come out and declared victory. Rick Saccone, for his part, says this race is not over. They believe once all those final absentee ballots are counted, things will end up weighing in the Saccone camp, in the Saccone corner. But as for now, Conor Lamb saying the time now has come for Democrats to regain their voice. They feel as though they've been able to do some of that tonight. Don?
Jason Carroll at Lamb headquarters. Van Jones. Lamb basically ran, though, as a Republican light. There's not much daylight between policies, even though one is a Democrat and one is a Republican. What is the lesson for Democrats here?
I think Democrats have to release a certain kind of ideological stranglehold on people who want to run in districts that are not like the districts, in New York and California. New York and California, I've got roots in both places, love them to death, but I also grew up in the rural South in a red state, and you just can't have the same kind of litmus tests in Birmingham that you have in Berkeley. And you've got to be willing to back and to support candidates who can actually win in parts of the country. Listen, it's very hard to remember, Don. This country is so big, we have 3 different time zones. It's as big as a continent. You got to let people be able to raise money and run and get support, even if they don't agree with every single part of the liberal agenda. And I tell you what, that is going to happen. People keep thinking that in some of these districts you're going to be able to run, left-wing, folks like, some of the people who they love to beat up on. But here's the reality. people are smart locally. And you're going to have a lot of smart local Democrats who are going to learn from this, and they're going to put the right people forward. The Republicans are not going to have it as easy this time because people know we're going to put up a big fight.
4 different time zones. It's that big. You said 3. There's 4, and if you count Hawaii, there's 5. So it is a very big country. Let's see. I'm gonna mark that because I do want to talk about at some point with my panel here in the studio about this litmus test that Democrats have had for such a long time for their candidates, and maybe things will change when it comes to this. Steve, so what do you think this race came down to? Was it a referendum on Trump, or was it more than just that?
I think to quote Tip O'Neill, all politics, I think, is local. And this was a local race with a very good candidate in Conor Lamb, and I think a lackluster candidate, to be honest, in Saccone. I think the lesson to try to draw comparisons to Trump is that Saccone is not Trump, to his discredit, and Lamb, to his credit, is not Hillary Clinton. He's much, much better than Hillary Clinton. That's why there's a very different dynamic here. But I would also say this, on a national basis, and I agree with Van, I think the Democratic Party is probably getting smarter. It needs to, by the way. I mean, frankly, it's been put on its heels for the better part of a decade, lost, for instance, 1,000 state legislature seats under the tenure of Barack Obama, I think by relying too much on hard left policies. So it seems to me like the party is starting to find its footing and is going to tolerate more ideological diversity. People like Conor Lamb, that's smart. But in terms of connecting it to Trump, when you're now talking about a national race within the Democratic Party, within a national primary, I don't think there's any way somebody like Conor Lamb, somebody of that ilk, can win the nomination, for instance, for 2020 for the presidency. So there, I believe, you are going to have an Elizabeth Warren or a Kamala Harris or somebody who is hard left taking on the president for re-election in 2020. And I think the results will be like 2016.
Do you think, Van, that they're going to see more Democrats running as Republican lights from now on?
We're calling them Republican lights, but basically what we're actually talking about is people who fit their district. That's something I think is important for us to recognize. So I think you are going to. We have to have more moderate people. Right now, the energy in both parties is on the wings. The right wing, the populist wing of the Republican Party has most of the energy. The left wing of our party has most of the energy. But that doesn't mean that in every district, everywhere, those candidates are going to be able to be successful. And so you're going to have that. But when you say Kamala Harris is hard left, I mean that's part of what you're going to see also. I think you're going to have some people who Republicans want to write off because maybe they're from California. Kamala Harris is going to have a great deal of appeal. She's a former prosecutor. She's no shrinking violet or ultra lefty at all. We've got some candidates, but I think when you're talking about 2020, but let's talk about 2018. In 2018, you've got a Democratic Party that wants to win, and is going to want to make sure that there is a counterbalance to Donald Trump in the Congress. Congress has been delinquent in holding him accountable, and people are going to tell you what. These tweets every day and being depressed and stressed out every day by Donald Trump tends to focus the mind. And you're going to have a much smarter Democratic Party in 2018 than you had 2016.
And focus the ballot, too. Focus the ballot. Listen, I got to run. Thank you both. I appreciate it. I want to bring back Mark Preston now, Bakari Sellers, Amanda Carpenter, and Scott Jennings. So, listen, Bakari didn't get to speak last time. So what do you think, Bakari?
I think Bakari will be very happy tonight.
No,
listen,
go ahead.
Let me just let me go around. I have a lot of thoughts. I want to start first with Mark Preston. Earlier today, he regurgitated a comment that was made by Barack Obama about clinging to your guns and your Bibles and that. But he failed to acknowledge the fact that Barack Obama won Pennsylvania twice, and as Amanda pointed out in the break, he actually won union households as well. The reason I bring that up is because it goes to a deeper point. The fact that what Conor Lamb did was, and I hate to refute not just you, Don, but also Van and the other gentleman, but there wasn't anything Republican light. In fact, what Conor Lamb did was he ran to the base and the heartbeat of what the Democratic Party was. I mean, this is somebody who ran on protecting the ACA and health care for all individuals. This is somebody who talked about the fundamental inequalities of the tax bill that was just passed. But even more importantly, he went out there and harnessed the energy amongst union households, which many people believe to be the backbone of the Democratic Party. And
but
so
that was my point, is that what the Democratic, what you said, used to be.
And what it's not
union workers and blue-collar workers.
And,
that's what I meant.
But is this union workers just coming back home to Democrats after Hillary failed to
correct, and that's what we're seeing. It's not as if they've been gone for 2 decades. I mean, they just left. They just had a hiccup, and they didn't vote in the same numbers that they voted for Barack Obama. The last thing, and let me just point this out, because what is his name again, Steve?
Steve Cortez.
What Steve said that we have a bunch of old social justice warriors and we're moving away from what Conor Lamb is. The fact is this: the Democratic Party has to be both. Because what Doug Jones was a social justice worker. What Conor Lamb is, he's somebody who's very pro-union, going out there, and they can win in their respective
But you know what both Doug Jones and Conor Lamb were? They weren't anti-Trump zealots. You didn't see them out lighting their hair on fire about Trump. I think they intuitively knew the anti-Trump momentum was there on the ground, and they didn't have to push the envelope. And Democrats,
talk about it.
yeah, they've been very smart
policy,
and disciplined about that. And while the unions have been on the ground organizing, which, you know, we have to talk about what is happening with the unions, what happened in West Virginia with the teacher strike. They're getting organized in places like Oklahoma, Kentucky, red states where unions have a big presence. Republicans better be on the lookout.
I do have to say this before I let you get in. I mean, listen, Doug Jones could win or whatever, but we have to remember there was a Roy Moore factor to this.
Sure, but he didn't overplay it and make it about Trump. He was very smart and disciplined, and I think Democrats are getting smart on that.
Go ahead.
You know what I think is interesting about Mark bringing up the clinging to your guns and religion? That's exactly what Conor Lamb did. Literally, he was clinging to an AR-15 in the first ad that he ran in this race. So he was actually running the kind of race that Republicans are being accused of running by Barack Obama. Barack Obama didn't win this district. McCain won it. Romney won it, as has been pointed out by all these Democrat strategists. And as a special election, Lamb was not subjected to having to run in a Democratic primary. He was chosen at a party level, but he can't run an ad shooting an AR-15 and win a Democratic primary.
Why not? Jason Kander did. Jason Kander won a statewide.
That's a statewide race. In a world where the resistance is dominating the I'm saying this situation set up for Lamb, but it would have been different and harder had it been a primary.
First of all, he's a military hero.
So your advice to Democrat candidates to shoot guns in Democrat primaries?
If you're a military hero and you know how to handle a gun, I mean, this is the problem with this is that Republicans are going to find every single excuse. I mean, you said here earlier today and said Sarkon was a bad candidate. Compared to what? Yes, I mean, what is he a bad candidate? What did he not do right?
I disagree with that. I think he was a fine candidate.
Okay, he's boring.
Okay.
There's 3 reasons.
But that's not a death knell to be boring. He was safe.
And he was late.
Time out. He did not raise money. You want to know why that's a red herring? Because Republicans, not just his campaign, but special interest group, they outspent Conor Lamb. So however much money he raised, the Republican Party spent more money in this race than the Democratic Party.
They have a lot of money.
I've never asserted otherwise, but
Lamb
candidate
spent
to candidate,
almost $2 million.
But candidate to candidate, Saccone was far lazier. He got outworked by Conor Lamb. I'm not disputing that. I mean, that's a fact.
Like, I agree with Bakari on this. I don't think Rick Saccone was the worst candidate. If he was boring, well, guess what? There's a ton of Republican candidates who are boring that don't have the benefit of being in a district with 20 points. What if you're a boring Republican in a district that's +2 for Trump, +5, +10? You're dead.
The local people will tell you of the 3 people seeking the nomination, he was by far the worst of the 3. So compared to what? Compared to the other people who wanted to run.
Down the line, a pretty reliable Republican who was
taken away from Lamb. They ran a good race.
You're like, this is a circular firing squad, because just a minute ago you were talking about the fact.
Let's stop the gun talk.
You were talking about the fact that a good Democrat couldn't win a primary, and now you're saying a good Republican couldn't even win his own primary in 8.
It wasn't a primary. It was chosen at the district. That's what I'm saying. They made a bad choice.
This is a prototypical discussion that's going to happen in the D.C. bubble. And I want this to continue to happen amongst Republicans in Washington, D.C. Because what we're seeing, and something that Van highlighted.
Louisville, by the way.
Well, I get you. But what we're seeing.
I'm not saying where I live.
Can I make.
All right, so go ahead.
I ruled the Acela.
This is an R+11. This is an R+11 district, all right? Paul Ryan is an R4. Nunes is an R6. These guys are going to be in trouble. So keep saying it's all about this candidate or that candidate. Say what you want to say, but there are 119 Republicans tonight that should not sleep easily.
Go ahead, Mark.
Let me just bring it.
Let me cut off Mark. I'm just trying.
Bakari, what do you think Mark thinks? Go ahead, Mark.
No, I actually think that we're all saying the same thing. I mean, quite frankly, I think we're all on the same page. The bottom line is that going back to the cling to the guns and religion, because you know that would not let you have the last word. The idea is, though, is that the Democratic Party has pushed away folks from the Midwest and from Middle America. And they have pushed away against folks who actually do believe in the Second Amendment or the rights that go along with that. What we're seeing here, though, is that Conor Lamb is somebody who pushed back against his party, but didn't push back against his whole party, because he is a Democrat. He's a Bob Casey Democrat. Bob Casey, for all our viewers out there who probably don't remember who he is, he was a pro-life governor from Pennsylvania and got on the wrong side of the liberal.
So let me ask you this then, because this whole thing, when I said Democrats have a litmus test for every single candidate, you have to do this, you have to do that. Every single Republican in the country, and I'm generalizing a little bit, was against Donald Trump. The moment he got the nomination, everybody fell in line. And on the Democratic side, well, Hillary Clinton doesn't believe in this. She doesn't do that. She doesn't do that. Bernie people were at the convention when she won the nomination screaming Bernie, and Democrats they just sat there and let it happen.
A litmus test is a fairly new phenomenon in the Democratic Party. It's something that we're trying to push back on. There are many of us that don't want this checklist of things you have to do. I mean, to your point and to your point earlier, I literally took my concealed weapons permit class with Nikki Haley. We took our class together, okay?
You didn't. You failed, though, right?
Yeah. Where am I? Central right now? Goodness gracious. But my point is that we cannot have a litmus test. We cannot have a litmus test as Democrats. What we fall into.
How do you say that to people who are marching, all the resistance and the people who are marching out? Because millions of people are marching out there.
What you saw in the Women's March and what you're seeing across the country is people coming together on various issues, whether or not it's common sense gun safety regulations, which you hear Democrats talking about, or reproductive rights, or what's going on our federal benches. There are a collection of issues, and we have that energy. Democrats are not one thing. We are Conor Lamb. We are Joe Manchin. We are Bakari Sellers. We are everybody and everybody in between.
Okay, I'll see. We'll see. I don't know about that. I mean, Hillary Clinton faced sometimes bigger headwinds from members of her own party than she faced from Republicans.
Hopefully we learned that lesson.
There you go. That's all I'm saying. Okay, stick around, everyone. When we come right back, our breaking news on Pennsylvania's special congressional race, Democrat Conor Lamb declaring victory, but until every vote is counted, this race is still too close to call. Here's our breaking news. Pennsylvania's special congressional election. Democrat Conor Lamb declares victory, but the race is too close to call until every single vote is counted. About 1,400 votes remain, and we are waiting some to be reported on tonight. President Trump stumped for Republican Rick Saccone this past weekend. Watch this.
Go out on Tuesday and just vote like crazy. You got to get out there. The world is watching. I hate to put this pressure on you, Rick. They're all watching. Because I won this district like by 22 points. I really feel strongly about Rick Saccone, and I know him. I feel strongly about him. He's an incredible guy. Number one, and I don't know that this is important, but to me it is, he's a very fine human being. He's a good person. He's really a good person. Personally, I like Rick Saccone. I think he's handsome.
I want to bring in CNN political commentator and Jack Kingston. He won by 20 points, not by 22 points, just so to get it straight here. Jack, the president and vice president, the family, they campaigned for Saccone over the weekend, and yet, here we are.
You know, they went in there, they tried their best to prop him up. I actually was talking to a consultant, Axiom Strategies, earlier tonight, and they said pre-Trump's visit, he was down by 6 points. So the president did give him a bump, not enough. There's no question about it that the party out of power is a little bit more motivated. I saw a lot of candidates like this in 2006, guys like John Bocherry and Glenn Nye. I think Simone was on the Hill when they came in that class of 2006. The Democrats took over. They were really blue dog Democrats, just like tonight, Conor Lamb. Just like him. I mean, look at him. He's pro-gun. He's personally pro-life. He's pro-tariffs. He's pro-tax cut. He's pro-coal. He's really out of step with the Democrat Party.
That's not true. So let me.
Well, excuse me, Simone, but those are all his positions. So.
But but it's not true that he's out of step with the Democratic Party. And so look, no one is anti-coal. No one is anti-tax cuts when it's tax. No one is anti-tax cuts when it's
Jack, let her finish. She was quiet while you spoke. Go ahead.
Not tax cuts for the wealthiest Americans, which is what this tax bill is. A tax bill that's not popular, by the way, which is why Republicans, particularly in this Pennsylvania district started running away from the tax bill. This is what I think folks are missing tonight, Don. The Democratic Party is a party of a number of factions that have organized under one umbrella of a shared set of values, if you will. Not necessarily a shared set of issues, because if you get 5 Democrats in a room, they might tell you they stand for 5 different things. The lesson from this is that, look, it's not an either or, as Bakari was saying. It's a we can do it all. And so we have to run candidates that are authentic to their message in spaces and places that connect with the community. And so you can be pro-choice, you can be pro-working people. You have to understand the factions in your district. And I think
is that the party you want to be? It's not the party that you had been, especially in 2016.
But here's the thing, though. The Democratic Party is always shifting and changing. I'll remind you, it wasn't the Democrats that passed the Civil Rights Act, okay? So the question on the table is, what will the Democratic Party look like a year from now, 2 years from now, even 5 to 10 years from now? And the answer to that question lies in which factions rise up.
And what lessons are learned? Because if there's a lesson learned from this and all the other special elections that we have been covering throughout the past year or so, is that Democrats have to sort of rejigger a little bit and figure out where they go. And maybe they have to run candidates that are more conservative. Go ahead, Jack.
But I'm just saying, and Simone can disagree, but he is out of step with the Democrat majority in Washington, D.C. He's pro-gun. He's personally pro-choice. He's pro-tax cut, meaning the Trump tax cut. And he's pro-tariff, meaning the Trump tariff. So these are not sustainable positions for a member of the Democrat Party in the Democrat Congress today. And Don, we've seen it before, because in 2006, many moderate Democrats, just like Conor Lamb, were elected, and they were all tossed out because they couldn't identify with either party. Some of them got beat in primaries, and a lot of them got beat in general elections, because that's not what the leaders that they elected stood for when they got to Washington, D.C. And is he going to consistently stand for Tim Ryan over Nancy Pelosi? He may for a while. I mean, Gene Taylor from Mississippi, who Simone knows, he did that for many, many years, but eventually it catches him.
Okay, go ahead, Simone.
Look, I think that Democrats should be excited across the country tonight. This means that the blue wave is real. I think we saw in Alabama that the blue wave is real, but I want to caution folks. There is no blue wave in this country without black and brown people, without working people. So you have to understand who are the folks in this district. And where national Democrats mess up, where the D-TRIP and the DSCC and all these and the DGA, when they drop in and they do not take stock of what the climate is on the ground, that is when we mess up. We took stock of the climate, and I think we're going to do well come this fall.
So listen, Dana Bash threw out a number earlier tonight that's significant. She said 114 House districts that are even more competitive than tonight. More competitive. That's got to scare Republican colleagues on Capitol Hill, Jack.
There's no question about it. And I'm saying I think this was a very significant victory for the Democrat Party. I would say that the Democrats keep bringing up Alabama. They're absolutely wrong on that. Not only was not only was it all about the good judge down there being a terribly flawed candidate, but that the attorney general race down there and the tiff between the governor and Luther Strange, that had so much to do with it. But Simone, so what I would give you is you've won these state legislative races. I think it's 36 or 37.
39.
So I mean, that's to me where the story is.
Jack, let me ask you something. So he won by 20 points. And then tonight, you know, I guess, well, almost 2 years later, you can say, it's not quite, a year and a half later, he possibly, the Republican candidate possibly loses. That doesn't scare you?
No, it does scare me. There's no question that our party is going to have to do what Conor Lamb does, is sometimes triangulate between where the White House is and their own provincial politics. You just have to do that. Democrats and Republicans do it in their own party all the time, where they have to triangulate, and they have to get on the ground, and they have to knock on every single door. But they also...
While you're answering this, I want you to take a look. I want to put this graphic up, Jack, and I'm going to let you finish here. This is a graphic. It's from the New York Times. The blue arrows show where voters trended from Republican to Democrat since 2016. And hopefully you can see air. That's a lot of blue arrows, man.
It really is, and you know, it shows a fickleness of the voters right now, that philosophically they're out testing both parties to find out what works for them, and they're adjusting it. And so candidates have to be very, very attuned to their own grassroots sentiments. And one of the things that we did learn, both parties, in this election, is polling is not as reliable as it used to be. Part of it is because people are on cell phones, but the other part is people who were on the ground there said, you know, they couldn't figure out which way this election was going to go.
Yeah. Hey, Simone, stand by because we're going to take a break. I'm going to bring you back on the other side. Stick around. When we come back, much more in our breaking news. Democrat Conor Lamb declares victory in the Pennsylvania special congressional race, but the absentee votes still being counted right now. Our breaking news this morning, Democrat Conor Lamb declares victory in Pennsylvania's special congressional election. A race that's just too close to call until all the votes are counted. But it should have been a slam dunk for Republicans. Back with me now, Mark Preston, Bakari Sellers, Amanda Carpenter, Scott Jennings, Simone Sanders, and Jack Kingston. You wanted to rebut something Jack was talking about, Simone?
You know what? It's so late. I don't even remember what Jack said. I'm kidding. I just want to say this. I want to reiterate that Conor Lamb did not run Republican light. He did run as a Democrat. And I think what this means for Democrats in 2018 is that you can run good races with good candidates and solid messaging and great ground games. Mm-hmm. But we have to do the work to identify good candidates and to make sure we are going out there reaching people where they are in beauty shops, barbershops, in the Bible studies, wherever they are. We have to go there.
Okay, Mark, this is from Alexander Marquardt, is reporting. In the morning, Saccone will be at home while his campaign team meets with the legal counsel to assess his options. Legal counsel, Communications Director Patrick McCain says that will include lawyers from Washington, from the RNC, from the NRCC. No decision will be made until after the meeting. I can't wait to get my new glasses. I can't read the small type. Go ahead. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, there's no automatic recount, right, in Pennsylvania law. So, I mean, this is, quite frankly, the same meeting is going to be happening with Conor Lamb and all his lawyers because, you know, they're going to try to figure out how do we stop this? How do we just declare victory? How do we move on? This is not out of the ordinary. Let me just say one thing here that I think that a lot of people will draw scorn at, and that's fine. Bring it on. I think that this is a victory for both political parties tonight. And here's the reason why.
Bring the scorn.
Oh, stop it, Simone. Here's the reason why. It is a very big wake-up call right now for the Republican Party at this point to get their act together, specifically the candidates. And everyone's kind of been talking about that tonight. And it's also a very big wake-up call for the Democratic Party that this isn't in the bag. And if you are a Democratic strategist right now, what you're hoping for is you want your activists to be hungry. If they feel like they're fulfilled right now, then that's a losing proposition heading into November. It's a wake-up call for both.
So, but everyone says, you know, Republicans need to get their act together, Republican candidates. What does that mean?
What I think part of this means, Republicans have gotten very lazy in these races and running a cookie-cutter campaign against Democrats in which they tie the Democratic candidate to Nancy Pelosi. They paint them as anti-gun. They're going to go in your house and take your guns away. They're going to raise your taxes. They're going to make anyone in the world who wants to be a U.S. citizen a U.S. citizen. I mean, it's cookie cutter. And so when a Democrat deviates from that a little bit and you can't tag them with bam, 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 those hits, they don't know what to do. So they're going to have to get smarter, too.
Mike Murphy, we've had him on before. He is a Republican consultant and a Trump critic. He said we should be able to elect a box of hammers in this district. If we're losing here, you can bet there is a Democratic wave coming. What do you think of that, Scott?
Well, any district that has a significant suburban population is absolutely on the Republican watch list right now. So there's a lot of districts like this, and you see what Conor Lamb did. You've seen what Democrats did in the Virginia governor's race last year in the suburbs, running up the score. And so at the end of the day, you have to put all these kinds of districts that aren't completely rural on the list of, hey, if you've never had a real race, you might have one this year, and what does that mean? So I'd say tomorrow morning, the NRCC probably sending a memo to people that have suburbs in their district saying, last night, you saw what happened to Saccone. Don't be the next Saccone. Raise money and get out and work a little harder than you used to.
But what do you say, Bakari? Because Mark is trying to snatch victory from the jaws of defeat.
Yeah, I don't think nobody's listening to that.
Victory is determined by expectations.
He said both parties.
And the expectations going into tonight is that Conor Lamb was going to win before the polls even closed. And guess what? That's not what happened.
So the facts still remain. Donald Trump won this district by 20. The president of the United States was just there campaigning for this candidate, and they still lost.
And Scott just said raised tons of money. But listen, Saccone raised $10.6 million. Lamb 1.8 million.
He didn't raise it.
He did not raise it, but if they want to split hairs, he didn't raise it, but the Republican Party spent that much money.
They're going to spend more if there's a recount.
Let Bakari make his point, and then you guys go ahead.
Let me just say this. For all of everything that people are saying about the Democratic Party, and I'm very critical of the Democratic Party because I want us to be our very best selves, over the past year, we have won everywhere in this country. We have won in suburban areas. We've won in urban areas. We've won in rural areas.
You didn't win in West Virginia when the governor switced parties. I just want to
remind you. Jack is late.
Don,
let him finish his point, Jack.
But from this, and Democrats every single day. Mark was saying that you don't want them to get comfortable with victory, but with Donald Trump being president of the United States, Democrats will not be comfortable, and there are a lot of moderates that will not be comfortable.
I want you to hold that thought because I think that's very important. Jack, go ahead, make your point.
Let me say this. Conor Lamb, though, also had a message, and I agree with, all this is good content, but he also had a message, and what his message was to the 70,000 union households in that district is that I'm a traditional Democrat. I'm going to stand up for union jobs. That's why he was pro-tariff. That's why he's pro-coal. And he also said, I want to get to Washington and not be a Democrat or a Republican. I want to get what's right for Pennsylvania and America. That's a message that people like to hear. And I think that, getting back to Amanda's point, I do think there has been some cookie-cutter themes that people are tired of. And this guy, Conor Lamb, had a message.
Republicans also don't recruit candidates very well. I mean, I think there's a track
I don't know,
record.
they recruited me.
Okay, now we're making my point here.
That's why we say former Congressman.
Congressman, you're not in office anymore.
Too, Jack. We got a lot in common. Don't worry. But what I'm saying is, if we go back and look over the history of Todd Aiken, if we look at the young lady who was not a witch, Christine O'Donnell. We can go down the list of individuals, to Roy Moore, for example, who are not good candidates. And that's going to be the problem. What the Democratic Party has done with these organizations that are not the DNC, like Emerge, like Higher Heights, like Emily's List, they've gone out and they've recruited and trained some amazing candidates outside the normal parameters of the Democratic Party. So I do think one of the things going into this, not only will we have this momentum, but I think we'll actually have better raw candidates.
Okay. I think there's something, Don, last thing I want to know is...
Hold your thought.
All right,
we'll be right back. In Pennsylvania, Democratic candidate Conor Lamb declaring victory in Pennsylvania. Still too close to call, though officially. Back with me now, Mark Preston, Bakari Sellers, Amanda Carpenter, Scott Jennings, Simone Sanders, and Jack Kingston. Simone, is it enough to just run against Donald Trump?
No, no, I've been saying this since like August of 2016. No, it's not enough to run against Donald Trump. We have to have a message. And so folks want something to vote for, particularly millennial voters that folks are hoping that will come out. Upwards of 70% of millennials do not strongly identify with either political party, which means they don't care if you have a D, or R, or an I behind your name. They want to know what it is, in fact, you are talking about. And so what I think we saw with Conor Lamb is that, particularly in this district, he ran for working people and told working people in that district, working people which can be black, white, Latino, Native American, Asian American, and otherwise, by the way, what he would do for them and how he would support them, because that was the faction that could get him elected. The last thing I want to note is, look, I worked a governor's race in 2014 when we couldn't even utter the words Obama or Obamacare. And I was in Nebraska, okay? So I say that to say Donald Trump matters in 2018. And so you're going to see Republican candidates who are going to have to run away from the president to avoid getting swept up in this wave that is not necessarily anti-Trump in some respects, but a wave of folks that they just want to elect officials that are going to go to Washington and get to work and do something for them. Donald Trump is not actively demonstrating that he can do that, and neither are Republicans on the Hill for that matter.
Which brings me to my next point, because you have all this upheaval in the Trump administration right now. President Trump now saying, at least reportedly, that he's going to start being more Trump-like, more Trumpian, and go with his gut. And so if that does happen, Scott Jennings, that doesn't bode well, does it, for 2018 or possibly 2020?
Well, I mean, if it manifests itself in the president having a cabinet and a staff that he actually gets along with and listens to and trusts and can deploy, that would be a a net positive. I mean, at the end of the day, you know, we're referencing the Tillerson move today or yesterday now. He wasn't working with the Secretary of State. I mean, he calls up the South Koreans and makes a meeting with the North Korea leader and doesn't even tell the guy. So if being more Trumpian means getting a staff that he gets along with and that helps them move their agenda, fine. The other issue here is they've got to get back on the economy. The president did like 1 or 2 events on the tax cuts and the economy, and that was like 6 weeks ago. We haven't talked about it since. The economy is blazing. Friday's jobs report was huge. And no one is talking about this in the Republican Party except a handful of press releases. That's the only track back.
Well, that's what Gary Cohn, but that's what happens. You could talk about these things, but that was my whole point. There's such upheaval in the Trump administration that it gets drowned out by all these things. And for him to say, everyone says, nothing to see here, move along, there's no chaos. Well, you got Cohn, you got Tillerson, you have Hope Hicks, then you had Porter before that, and then who else?
But I mean, we have talked about the economy because Donald Trump and Michael Cohen stimulated the economy by giving Stormy Daniels $130,000. And so we've been talking about this day after day. That's just an example of the chaos that this White House is bringing on, and people are tired of that. People are growing weary of that. In South Carolina, I have moderates, Republicans, evangelicals that all come up to me and say, I don't know how you do it on CNN. It's so much news. It's all the time. We are getting so tired of this. At first, people found it to be cute. Now, the people are tired of it.
Yeah, I get even Trump supporters say, I don't know how you do it every single night.
I mean, I would just like to say that Bakari won the bet, if anyone's wondering. how to get Stormy Daniels.
To make a cohesive But don't you think, hold on, Jack, I do think that a lot of, some of the headlines, some of the shakeup, and this is just me, as someone who's been doing this for a long time, is that the Trump folks are working overtime to try to push Stormy Daniels out of the headline. They're working with it.
I don't think they have a message. You do remember that this is Infrastructure Week.
Yeah, I don't think unless they're intentionally creating chaos. You're seeing Donald Trump take a hold of his presidency. I mean, forget team of rivals. He wants a team of ditto heads. He specifically said that he wants Mike Pompeo because he thinks like me, we're on the same wavelength. He wants people who will reassure him and will carry out whatever he wants with blind loyalty. The end. And that is the job qualification.
Does not want to be challenged. Does not want to be challenged.
Yes.
Told that he is wrong. And Jack, of course, is going to say we're wrong. So go ahead, Jack.
I don't believe that. I know that it's very popular to say all he wants is blind loyalty, but I don't think that's the case. I served with Mike Pompeo. He's an outstanding guy. He graduated top of his class at West Point. That's a big deal. Went to Harvard Law School. He was a captain in the U.S. Army. He started a business, sold
what does that
out,
have to
and
do
started
with the president
another
not
business.
wanting blind loyalty?
Listen, that is true. Mike Pompeo is a good guy. He is qualified. But let's remember that one of his first acts as the chief of the CIA was to go chase down conspiracy theories about the DNC hacking. I mean, that was one of the first things he did to kiss up to Trump, and now he's been promoted.
Well, he's done an outstanding job at CIA. You don't have any criticism of him. But one thing that people are also forgetting is he's 54 years old. That's a job that's a 70-hour-a-week grind, and he is a guy who I think can put a lot of energy in it. Tillerson is a fine man. I was a big fan of his, but I think that there will be, beyond chemistry, a new kind of energy that I think that the president just wants to have in there.
I just want to know. You
He
just said Rex
publicly
Tillerson was
shamed
too old
Cohn
to be
and
the
Tillerson, and
Secretary
they're
of
both
State.
done, Jack, because they weren't. They didn't give blind loyalty to him. He publicly shamed them for it. It's not that their policies were terrible. Most Republicans, most people in the country agree with their policies. It was the president who didn't. He didn't like
Can you tell me a president that did not want loyalty in his cabinet, though? I can't think of one. It doesn't matter if they're Bill Clinton or Barack Obama.
Hold on.
Because he
Give
was
me
being
one.
asked
Hold
to
on,
fudge
Amanda.
information. Sorry.
Give me one that shames so many members of his own cabinet, including Jeff Sessions, and on, as this current president does.
I can't do that. But let me say this. I don't know one who doesn't want loyalty. And stylistically, Don, I agree with you.
Okay. Go ahead, Amanda. Sorry.
Hang
on.
No, one of the other stories that got lost in the chaos today was that an official at the immigration facility, he was being asked about the deportations happening in California, and because he couldn't back up the administration's assertion that a warning that the mayor in California had given to the immigrant community, essentially to get out that deportations were coming, didn't lead to a fewer number of deportations. He couldn't back that up because they had a similar number as they had gotten in the past. And so instead of giving the journalist the proper information, he was told to just refer the journalist to previous statements that Sessions had made. He didn't want to do that, and he said, listen, I don't want to pass on bad information. I don't want to deflect for this information, so he has to go. And he went.
My biggest problem with these staff shakeups is, first of all, there's way too much turnover. Barack Obama had 2 secretaries of state. Each one of them served for 4 years. We're already on his 2nd secretary of state right now, speaking of Donald Trump. But my problem delves a little deeper. I have a problem with the level of competence of the people that he's bringing into the White House and surrounding himself with. Rex Tillerson came with a great background. Rex Tillerson was a horrible Secretary of State. He hollowed out the department. But you can make a credible argument that he deserves to have that appointment and be in the White House. But people like Scaramucci, people like Omarosa, people like Seb Gorka, people like Stephen Bannon.
Yeah, put the faces up. Go ahead.
But I mean, these are individuals that have no business in anybody's White House. They have no credibility, and they do not have the level of intellectual capacity to do the job necessary. And I don't know if we want to, I mean, I want to be as generous or as kind as possible, but this is a fact that he does not hire the very best people. I mean, look at his Secretary of Education.
Loyalty is a higher priority than competence.
His loyalty is a higher priority than competence, and that is very dangerous.
All right, thanks, Mark. Thanks, Bakari, Amanda, Scott, Jack, and Simone. We'll be right back. Back with our live coverage now. We need to report on something that we had been having in the news now. Some breaking news. It's out of the UK. Stephen Hawking, the brilliant British physicist who famously overcame a debilitating disease to publish wildly popular bestsellers on the mysteries of the universe, has died. That's according to a spokesperson for his family. He was 76 years old. Matthew Chance has the story now in his Life and Times.
By any measure, Stephen Hawking's life was incredible, even more so because in the 1960s he was diagnosed with ALS, or motor neurone disease, and given just a few years to live. This rare form of motor neuron disease left him virtually paralysed, unable to express his profound vision of humanity and science without a voice synthesizer.
At one point, I thought I would see the end of physics as we know it. But now I think the wonder of discovery will continue long after I am gone.
But this was never a man bound by his own physical limitations. He revelled in a zero-gravity flight, freeing him, he said, from the confines of his wheelchair. He also wrote a series of children's books about space with his daughter Lucy. He had 2 other children and 3 grandchildren. For more than 3 decades, he was a professor at Cambridge University's Department of Applied Mathematics and Theoretical Physics, specialising in the study of black holes, and revered as a member of the academic elite. But Professor Hawking also did much to popularise science, playing himself in Star Trek,
Processed in the opposite direction,
and The Simpsons. In 2014, his life and romance with wife Jane Wilde was depicted on the big screen in the acclaimed film The Theory of Everything.
So the universe getting smaller and smaller, getting denser and denser, hotter and hotter.
You mean wind back the clock?
Exactly, wind back the clock.
Hawking consulted on the biodrama, which earned 5 Academy Award nominations and a Best Actor win for Eddie Redmayne for his portrayal of the physicist. Hawking's most famous work, A Brief History of Time, remains one of the best-selling science books ever written, and he was deeply concerned with humanity's survival.
I see great dangers for the human race. There have been a number of times in the past when its survival has been a question of touch and go. The frequency of such occasions is likely to increase in the future. We shall need great care and judgment to negotiate them all successfully. But I'm an optimist. If we can avoid disaster for the next 2 centuries, our species should be safe, as we spread into space.
He was, as ever, looking firmly to the future.